Cheers.
Cheers. Good morning.
Good morning. Cheers, everyone, and welcome to another morning drinking edition of Creative Happy Hour. This is Micah Black.
Hi, this is Karena Akhavein.
Woohoo! And we are your lovely co-hosts in this adventure in drinking and thinking that we call Creative Happy Hour. And I'm burning my fingers on our effing drink.
Know.
First of all, we're tired as F.
Yeah, so this is really important that we have this very, very special drink. We're going to get drunk on the creative possibilities this morning with
bright and early Irish coffee.
Irish coffee.
Yes, so this is our creation for today.
I have some Irish in my pedigree.
I do not.
It's perfect.
I do not, but it doesn't
I can bring
stop
the
me.
Irish.
Yes, exactly. The luck of the Irish.
Yeah, I bring the luck of the Irish.
Why are you making me do the stupid accent then when I read the recipe?
I know, because you're so good.
I'm not. It's like
you must have eaten a lot of Lucky Charms when you were a kid.
Lucky Charms. Yes. We're gonna have. We're gonna put this down. We're gonna taste it, and then we can put it down for it
because there's a lot of whiskey in it.
There is a lot of whiskey. Oh my god. Okay. Oh damn, dude.
Oh.
It is too early for that shit. I know you like it because you're a whiskey gal.
Yeah.
I know.
Woo, party.
I know. Morning party.
Yeah.
I have a hard time drinking that. Like, I'll do a corpse reviver, like, no problem, as we have well seen.
Yes.
In a previous episode.
She was guzzling
I was guzzling them, and I can do that. But the Irish coffee, to me, you know what? It just feels like it's not really a breakfast drink of champions. It feels like more of an after-dinner drink to me.
Well, it's kind of like you're going up and you're going down. I mean, it's like a roller coaster. It's like you don't know if you're coming or going on this drink.
It's so true. I mean, because you've got the freaking caffeine, which is like, and then you've got the alcohol.
That's
where
like,
yeah. And then you've got the cream, which is, thank God, kind of.
It's kind of dessert. Yeah.
It is kind of dessert, and it filters out like a lot of the pain factor here. It's terrible. Well, first of all, the ingredients. Should we talk about our fabulous ingredients?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Usually, since we're in Marin County, let's just go for organic, fantastic, natural, wonderful.
Fair trade,
hand batched,
Yeah, it's designer coffee is
designer
what we use.
Coffee that was roasted in some kind of awesome commune somewhere in an artisanal yurt.
A lot of, praying was happening.
Chanting.
There were crystals around.
Oh, crystals constantly.
Constant crystals.
Crystal action. So this coffee, okay, full disclosure, we use Nespresso, but
I mean, we're all about being honest and transparent on this show.
Completely. So we're doing what we can here, We
want to be good role models for
Nespresso, but we did the dark roast, and
it's actually delicious.
It's really good. I mean, thank God. We needed it. Nespresso.
We did.
So 2 shots, 2 of the long shots.
Yeah.
A long shot. That sounds like
it's
my
a long
day
shot.
Today. It's a long shot. And then you do brown sugar, which complements the Irish whiskey, obviously.
Yes.
Because we'll tell you the story in 1 second. But yeah.
Wait, I mean, we used Bushman's Irish whiskey?
Yeah. So
we went authentic.
We went full on. See? We totally cheated on the Nespresso, but we went full on authentic.
Well, I don't screw around.
No, exactly. No, you're very serious.
I don't want to shame my ancestors or anything.
Well, but then we shamed them just a little bit with the cream.
Yeah, because I showed up with a can of Ready Whip. I mean,
it should be organic sweet cream from the hills of Ireland.
Yeah.
That's not what we did.
Yeah, like Kerrygold or something.
Yeah, that's what you should do, and let us know how it turns out.
Yeah,
but the Ready Whip worked for us.
I mean, it's Sunday morning, people.
It is Sunday morning here, and you're not going to be watching this on a Sunday morning. You'll be watching it on a Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever the hell you do with your bad selves.
Yeah.
But this is us this morning, so we're going to do what we can. Anyway, the history of this drink is an interesting one. I don't know how much of it is legend, but I think a lot of it's true.
Probably.
There's an airport in Ireland, which I was like, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. Like a small, regional airport somewhere, and this bartender there at the airport, who's a very enterprising dude, like he's super interesting. His name was Joe Sheridan.
Okay.
Joe Sheridan.
Joe.
And he was
Joe.
Yeah, he was near Limerick, Ireland.
Of course it was.
And if it wasn't so early in the morning, we would come up with a limerick
for sure.
Like there once was a Joe Sheridan. But we didn't do that.
No, we weren't that creative this morning.
Not at all.
At least
it was
not about
creative
limerick.
sad hour. So there were a bunch of passengers, this Airbus basically back in the day, but this was like in the late 40s. So this is recent-ish, really.
Yeah.
And some passengers were going to be taking this flight, and the flight was delayed. There was really bad weather. They turned around, they come back to the airport, and Joe is like, I need to do something for these poor people. They are freezing their butts off. They're in a bad mood. What can I do? So he makes them a nice hot Irish coffee. And he gets super popular for it. And somebody's like, wow, is this coffee Colombian? He's like, no, man, that's an Irish coffee. And I was like, that's so cute. I just did this fucked up like Scottish-Irish mashup. It's fine.
That's okay.
Whatever. I want my freedom. Anyway. So
you're a brave heart.
I know. That's my problem. I am a brave heart this morning for getting up and drinking this. But
I don't even know if Braveheart, I think Braveheart was actually Scottish.
I know it is. Yeah. That's my whole point.
So.
And so am I. I've got the Scott fro, and I've got it all going on. I'm so not on theme. It's sad. I think this. I know
we should have at least worn green.
I know. I'm like, I think this is Scottish wool, and I feel so bad.
But I am actually Scottish.
Oh shit.
I have a little bit of Irish on my mom's side.
So you were lying.
But my family history is
right.
Now that I'm getting some whiskey on board, I'm gonna start telling
the truth.
Yeah.
Shit, be careful.
Yeah, this is like a truth serum.
It is a truth serum. I love it. That's what they should call this. Truth serum.
Irish truth serum.
Ooh, I wonder if there's actually a cocktail called truth serum. We should see. That'd be good.
I think we should do a truth serum episode.
I like it. So Irish coffee. And so Joe Sheridan, somebody from the US who had a bar in San Francisco. There you go.
Our heart.
Yeah, so the Buena Vista, I believe, was the name of this hotel and bar. And the owner comes to Ireland, tastes this Irish coffee, and was like, shit, man, this is how I'm going to make my fortune. It's going to be amazing. And so he asks Joe for the recipe. Okay. And Joe Sheridan, bless his heart, I'm going to have to read this because he's so stinking cute. So this is his recipe.
This is so good. I love this.
It's very poetic. We like this because we were creative happy hour.
We don't have a limerick, but we have Joe Sheridan's response to this offer, this business partnership offer.
Cream, rich as an Irish bro. Ready whip, poor as what trash. We're not as poetic. Okay, coffee, strong as a friendly hand.
This is getting a little pornographic.
Oh, it gets better. Sugar, sweet as the tongue of a rogue.
Wow.
Yeah. And then whiskey, smooth as the wit of the land. I'm like, oh, Joe, you're so cute.
Wow. I would have probably
taken him home in your pocket, right? Which this guy did.
Does he get cuter than?
Yeah. So this journalist who was a travel journalist whose last name was Delaplane, which cracks me up because like you're a travel journalist, you have plane in your name. You're lying.
Give me a break.
You're lying.
That is just
right. So he goes to investigate this further, and they can't get
investigate.
It's important. He's like serious investigative reporting. That's what
we've discovered an Irish coffee here, people.
And so he goes and he wants to figure out more about this recipe. They can't seem to get the cream to sit right on top.
We have the same problem.
We had a little issue with it too, so I get that this is a problem.
Yeah.
But that's what happened, and so they're like, there's only one solution. We're gonna have to get sweet-tongued, Joe Sheridan over here to come to San Francisco to work at the Buena Vista and teach everybody how to make these coffees, which Joe does. He emigrates to the United States in the 50s. Amazing. Comes right here to San Francisco, spends 10 years making Irish coffees, and then drops dead. That's not the cute part of the story, so forget that dropping dead part. But the great part is that Buena Vista was making thousands and thousands of Irish coffees. It was indeed their
it was
fortune.
It was their signature drink.
It was their,
it's so interesting that you can, and I know that this is the drinking part, and I probably shouldn't be thinking too much.
No.
However, I do think that, we need to think about this project. He creates this drink. Yeah. And then he really does follow through.
He does the work he needs to do to make it happen.
And then he creates partnership.
Totally.
With this, this bar in San Francisco. And that is, I think, when you create something, that is a perfect example of how it kind of creates a life of its own.
Totally. Well, and that actually brings us to why how we're tying this to creativity, because, and this, we're not yet at the thinking part, don't worry, but we just want to give you guys a little heads up, is that I was reading about this Irish whiskey and came across the fact that John Lennon and Yoko Ono, when they decided to move to New York, so it's all about moving and about, you know, partnerships and romance and all this stuff. When they decided to move to New York, they landed from their flight. This is very much an airport. I think we should have gone to SFO.
I know, we really should have filmed in FSO. FSFO.
In dyslexia.
I'm already slurring.
I know.
I mean, this is pathetic.
It is so early. It is so early. Anyway, we should have done it SFO. We suck, but whatever. We, you know, SFO. Maybe you want to sponsor us, SFO Airport Bar. Hi, it's us. But so they land in New York, and this reporter is there to meet them and everything. And they're like, "No, dude, we just want an Irish coffee."
Yeah, he just wants to order an Irish coffee.
And it's like, dude, we're not in San Francisco. Are you confused? But it doesn't matter. They went and they got their Irish coffee, and that got me thinking about John Lennon and Yoko Ono and their romance.
Well, and they're the quintessential artistic couple.
Totally love it or hate it, and
love it or hate it. A lot of people hate it.
Yes, so pretty interesting. But then also on the coffee theme, you know, we always do glass half empty, glass half full. Today we're going to do mug half empty, mug half full, and it's actually empty, but it makes it full, and you guys shall soon understand.
Yes.
So we came across this adorable story of this Italian artist, Giulia Bernardelli.
Oh, I love this.
Yes, and it's so cute. She's on Instagram, and we'll put up her Instagram handle, which is @Bernulia, so BERNULIA. She kind of starts her morning, you know, very early with a cup of coffee.
Which I completely am in complete.
We do that. She uses on her Instagram account, she has a quote by Miles Davis, another incredible creative in a completely different genre, which I love that she does. It says, "My future starts when I wake up every morning. Every day I find something creative to do with my life." And so she took that literally.
No, when we talked about that, I literally wanted to cry.
Right? You're like, oh, it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
You're like, I'm not creative enough in the morning.
Well,
you are. You're very creative. That is, you do your creative mornings.
I really do. I mean, the morning time is like, my kid is still asleep. I have coffee. I get jacked on coffee. And then it's just this whole thing. I mean, I don't put whiskey in it usually during the week. I want to, but sometimes
one feels like it.
But I sit on my hands. I'm like, you're not having whiskey. You're going to work. The whiskey
thing. Is crazy. No. Well, the whole waking up. I mean, I have my coffee, and it actually helps me because I'm such an ADD little freak that mass amounts of caffeine are like nature's Ritalin.
Yeah, nature's Ritalin. I love that. # nature's Ritalin.
Yes, nature's Ritalin, and it's wonderful because that's why I get most of my creative stuff done, and my kind of real like just pushing ahead type of work. Get it done in the morning because like research I can do at night. But producing, I have to do in the morning because it's, you know, caffeine at work. So I kind of love that. Another thing before I forget and before I go on to this
we want to hear about this artist.
Absolutely. Have you heard of Creative Mornings?
Yes. Yes, I've looked at their website a lot.
Such a great movement.
And I've wanted to go.
I'm always like, it's too fucking early. I can't.
Well, I want to go to some of their events, actually. And I've looked, you know, they have different speakers in different cities.
Absolutely.
And so,
well, the concept is really cool. I mean, the concept is that before you start your day, start with something creative and awesome and inspiring.
Yeah.
And I love it. And every city I've ever lived in has had Creative Mornings. I've always been on the mailing list, and every time, ooh, but traffic. And it sucks. Like, I feel like I'm making a shitty excuse. And I think we should make a pact to go to one of these.
We need to go to one.
We need to just
we really
it.
do.
And we will report back. And it'll be awesome. But okay, back to...
We're more of a happy hour, creative happy hour types.
We kind of are. Well, you know what? We're just playing to our strengths. Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Well, I mean, and that's what you should do.
I believe that that's true.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Yes. So this artist, Giulia Bernardelli, did I get that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Good
Okay.
job.
Giulia Bernardelli. So she starts with her coffee and she makes these incredible images, and we're going to pop some up, which is another reason why, yes, we want you to subscribe to our podcast in every single format, but video is awesome.
Yes.
Because you'll get to see Giulia's artworks. She does things ranging from ships to design. She's been hired by companies to do collaborations.
She does portraits also. She's done Yoko and John.
She's done John and Yoko in Coffee, and it is incredible.
Yeah.
I love it. Her it's just incredible. I was just curious about her. I guess she's a visual artist, but then she has to incorporate photography because her stuff is so, it'll just disappear. It's very, ephemeral. I was like, what's that word? It's early. Oh, I found it. Ephemeral. Yes. Yeah. So it's super ephemeral, and it's just incredible. I was like, wow, this bitch is creative, and I'm so impressed. Like, hopefully one day I would love to have her answer a few creative questions for us today. So that's another thing we wanted to announce, is that we had this brilliant thought about how we're going to be incorporating more creative voices in our podcast.
Yes.
Which is, when you're at the bar, right? And you've been talking to your friends, and maybe you start talking to that cute guy at the next bar stool over, or that interesting gal. It's been known to happen. Your friend kind of starts going home because they're more responsible than
they gotta go home. Their husband texts and they gotta go.
Exactly.
And you're just like, okay.
And then all of a sudden they remember something really cool that you should have touched upon in your creative conversation that you had.
And God knows I've left, and how many times have I texted you and I'm like, and remember in this, and I didn't tell you this.
Exactly. So there's that. And so they're going to call you and you're not going to answer.
No, because you're still at happy hour.
Busy drinking. So what do? You leave that message, and then later on you'll listen to it and be like, wow, shit, that was really cool.
Yeah, and it was relevant to the conversation.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to bring in experts and creatives, and you guys and listeners and anybody else. We're going to have a phone number, which we're orchestrating right now. Yeah. And basically we're going to have call-ins, and we're going to be able to play them back later and interact with the stuff that is said on these messages, so that we can really kind of riff on that. And it's going to be super enriching, I think.
Yeah, because I think there's so many more things that we can't cover just with us. We need those other resources to
exactly
to help us riff on it and to become more of a creative happy hour with our creative community.
Totally. And also, since we're doing the creative romantic partnerships and everything, we will accept creative booty calls, whatever.
I mean, if you need to call us and leave a message about how you want to
get some creative booty on or whatever.
You want to do some finger painting with us.
That
we get it.
We get it.
We've all been there.
We're not
going to judge you.
We will.
We'll judge you, but
not in public.
Not in public. We'll just.
But we're good. So I think that is. You're like, why did I think of that? Yeah, we'll do the. So that is. Well, speaking of finger painting and all that stuff, I was thinking, did Marina Abramovic, did she actually roll herself in paint and then roll across the canvas, or was that somebody else? I can't remember if that was her.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but she was one of those creative partnerships. I think that we'll be discussing. So you were talking to me about you had your coffee this morning, and you were talking to your boyfriend, who is a creative, right?
Yeah.
And so you guys had a whole glass half empty, glass half full moment, which I think was half full, because I think it was interesting to see. Because I'm so happy that I had the glass half full or half empty that was totally full. And you had a personal story to share with us, so let's...
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't get to, because my boyfriend and I are both single parents, we are always working and dealing with our kids, and, so when we have time together, it's sacred. We have to fight to have time together, and anyway. So he's like, babe, I can't believe you're scheduling this podcast at Sunday morning.
You're like, neither can I.
And I'm like, trying to wake up and get with the program and get my creative groove on, and I was like, wait a minute, this is something that's really important to me.
And he's a musician,
and he's a very creative. I mean, he's a musician.
Well, he's a multi-passionate.
Yes,
creative.
He is a multi-passionate creative, and at first he was kind of like irritated that I was ruining our morning together. But then at the same time, he was like, you know what? You're right. He was like, because he's very involved with a podcast called The Perfect Pour, because he's really
plugging them here. Yeah. So
and I follow The Perfect Pour, and and I follow all his.
Follow us? I hope so.
Yeah, they should. If they don't,
hello,
you better follow us.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he'll do little music things for them,
awesome. And his music is, by the way, and we should be a little bit more professional about this. His music is at the beginning of our podcast. Yes. That's our intro and conclusion music. He's super talented and super funny. His music is
it's really, ridiculous,
really
and we're going to bring more of it onto the show.
Will indeed, yes.
But I said I was like, you have to support me. This is important to me. This is a creative project. It's very important to me.
It's hard enough to get up in the morning.
Yeah, and he was like, you're right. He was like, this podcast that he's involved with, he's like, they in 7 years have never missed a day. I think he said there was one day that one of the guys was sick, like really, really sick. But he's like, in 7 years, he's like, they're so devoted.
That's what it is, yeah.
And he is a disciple of this podcast. Like,
love it.
So into it. Whenever he goes down to Fresno, he goes and tries to visit and be on it. And so, once he thought it through, because he has the creative experience, because
he's a fellow creative, he gets it.
He was like, okay, I get it. And that is also the thing that he loves about me, because he knows that I value that.
Right.
And that is one of my core values is, if you're with somebody and like all they want to do is, I don't know, maybe watch football. Not that there's no creativity in that. But it's like,
we're not going to judge.
Or I went to my hairdresser yesterday, and she said, and I was telling her about the pod. What's new? She said,
we talk about it everywhere. So
I show her. I'm like, this is how you watch it. You subscribe. And so she was like, yeah, but I mean, are you making any money? And I'm like,
not yet.
I'm like, I have a growth mindset here. I put yet on the end of every sentence.
Exactly. You're like, are you done doing my hair yet?
But I guess, I said not yet. However, is that a reason not to do something?
Right.
I said, you can't tell me that just because I'm not rolling in the cash yet.
Right. Yes.
That's not a reason to do something. And I, I'm really high on coffee right now.
Yeah.
But, you have to fight for your creative rights.
For sure. And actually, I think that's a really interesting point because, my husband loves it when I talk about him on the podcast. But this morning he was very sweet and he did go pick up some awesome pastries for us at Rustic Bakery, which we'll just plug for free because that's how good we are. But Rustic, maybe you want to send us some pastries next time.
It'd be nice if we got a couple almond croissants.
Is that too much to ask? I don't think so. Like, this is the second time we're plugging them, I think.
Yeah.
Huh? Just saying. This is free promotion almost for now. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Rustic Bakery's doing too badly.
I don't think they're suffering. I think they can throw out a few croissants.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, we'll even take the, 2 hour old or whatever, like, end of the morning.
Yeah, let's not go crazy, but yeah.
End of the morning.
But so he, usually he's kind of upset if I steal away a Sunday morning because same thing with him where, he works out of the home full time. I work, overly full-time, but I'm usually here, so it's kind of hard for him to understand usually that I'm taking time away from our time together because he thinks that my schedule should fit into his schedule because he's earning more money outside of the home, and I'm like, it doesn't work that way. And that's where you have that challenge of not being with another creative because they look at value as actual monetary value. And I think though he's just starting to understand that, eventually creative collaborations and creative projects can yield financial, and this is something actually that I'm going to be touching upon on our next episode. I discovered this amazing dude who does these incredible collaborations and he doesn't think about the financial part and he's very successful, but we'll talk about that next time. But I just want to but I think that that's with the relationships, so I think that we can segue from
I mean, we can segue from that into the thinking part because that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about these relationships and how they the advantages and disadvantages within these relationships and how they propelled the creative projects, the creative stories, the creative lives. And I think that's...
So we have, everybody, when they think, we posted on Instagram, we had 4 different photos. We had a little montage of photos. So we had John and Yoko, obviously. Who
super famous creatives that everyone can recognize so they can get the concept very easily.
Yes, and then so we'll be starting with them and then we'll just talk about more basic concepts of romantic, creative lives that are intertwined, but we had John and Yoko, and we'll talk about them for sure. We had Salvador Dali and Gala, however she pronounced her name. His Russian wife. That wasn't even her real name.
And
so I don't feel that.
Do we have Stieglitz and O'Keeffe?
Yes, of course, Stieglitz and O'Keeffe, and who always trips me up because she has 2 F's in her name, and I'm like, that's not how you spell O'Keeffe. Whatever.
That's how she spelled it.
Speaking of Irish, I'm like, what the hell? And
And then who else was on there?
Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera.
Yeah.
Yes. So those are, you know, when you think of creatives, and then you've got, if we want to throw in, we can have F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda Fitzgerald. Yes. We can have
who else do I have?
Jackson Pollock and Lee. Poor thing. See, she's an example of a spouse who was more successful to start with, and then she was absorbed by the personality of her.
I mean, it's almost like, remember in Pac-Man where they would like yeah, and it would just like consume and then it would become part. Yeah,
exactly.
That
happens. I think that's a big danger, you know, in a lot of these collaborations, because I know Zelda Fitzgerald, same thing. She actually wrote a lot of the things that are attributed to Fitzgerald. So half of his whole myth and legend, even more so because she was kind of cuckoo in the head, which makes for creative glamour, you know, never ending. She was super responsible for a lot of that, but she didn't really get
the credit at all. But then, you know, we talked about earlier, you know, Diego Rivera was way more famous and sought after as an artist.
Completely.
And he would talk about
political ties too.
Yes,
he was like this macho.
But he really, I mean, he was kind of a career, getting commissioned to do these big murals.
Well, yeah, because he was in with the government and everything. And so, he was this big powerhouse, and she was.
But he would always say that she, you know, Frida was more talented than him.
Yeah. And, well, she had her demon. They both had their demons.
But then it turns out that, you know, ultimately, I would argue that she became more famous than him.
Yeah, I believe
as an artist.
I believe she did, but also it's because she was more tragic than he was.
Yeah,
which is really horrible.
Very tragic.
You know, I mean, she was like handicapped at the end. She had her accident. She was in bad health. She had her mental demons. I mean, poor woman. She couldn't catch a break, and he kept cheating on her like repeatedly.
Yeah,
it was super tough. But he said that her death was probably the most heartbreaking thing that ever happened to him. And I'm like, as well, it goddamn should well be, you know. It's.
I mean, at a certain point, you know, you would think he'd be happy for her. Because she suffered so much, and he was a lot of the reason she was suffering.
He was a big part of her suffering, for sure. I mean, but I think that there's so many photographs of them together, which is so interesting. I think they were very conscious of being this creative joint powerhouse and of contributing to each other's mystique in a way, you know?
I think so too.
Which I think takes us kind of organically to John and Yoko, because they started to control the way the media portrayed them. They limited access to them. Remember when they did their whole bed-in?
Yeah, the wedding bed. And that was what I was telling you earlier, you know, because we were talking about, you know, Paul and I were talking about how you know, John was just creating art, and you know, he was being an artist. But then when he hooked up with Yoko, he started talking about it as like art. He started to really like, it started to become this, you know.
I think at first the Beatles were just these guys that he was hanging out with, and
they were obviously making art. They were being super creative.
They were being creative. But I think they were saying that they were like making music, which to them was just like, it was kind of an extension of them having fun, and then it became this competition, because I know that, and we'll actually talk about John Lennon and Paul.
Well, and I think that would be a true time. Because that's a creative partnership.
That was a creative partnership, and it was competitive.
Yes,
as well, which is really interesting.
I don't know that it was initially though.
No, I don't think it was either.
I think initially it was like they were filled in these parts that the other one had. And
exactly, and that's but so they were, but everybody kind of said, oh, it's super weird that you're with Yoko 24/7 all the time, and he's like, I was with the guys in the Beatles 24/7. We're like sleeping in the same room for years on end.
And no one had a problem with that.
No one had a problem with that. Because why? Because they were guys and they were making this money and they had this product.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. And then when he decided to kind of scale back and become this house husband, you know, everybody's like, oh my God, Yoko like totally poisoned your mind. He's like, no, she's let me see that I had an alternative that I could do. And he's like, and now she's the business person for me. And to be fair, Yoko really did create these business partnerships that he never would have come up with. Ever.
But I think that the thing with once you become this icon, you become famous, then people are unable to separate that you have a personal life from your art.
Oh, totally,
and so
totally. No, they feel pissed. They feel like they've been cheated.
And you're just like, why can't he have a relationship with whoever he wants?
Totally, and that's exactly, and that's what he was. He was like, give me a break. And the funny thing is, I was reading an interview of them that was done like in the 70s. It was a Playboy interview, actually. And it's really fascinating because to my mind, the interviewer just kept coming back at it with that exact thing. kind of like, but how dare you? But don't you want to keep being, you know, this musician? But don't you want to do this? But why? And the interviewer just could not wrap their head around it, and that was fascinating. But you had some interesting points about
Yoko's... and you know that song that he does when he's, you know, I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round, and, you know, and he's like, people say I'm crazy, you know, doing what I'm doing, and you know, I'm no longer in the big time, you know, and you know, he even took that and used it as a creative platform, you know, this conflict that people were having about his new identity. But no, I mean, Paul was saying that, you know, sometimes when you become so focused, what did he say? Because I wrote it down. When you get too focused on becoming the artist, I was like, wait, I have to write this down. But he's like, when you get too focused on becoming the artist, which is what I think, you know, he was starting to do with Yoko. That's I think one of the reasons
the access to them and how they portrayed themselves, and like being in bed looking like these angels, like they were so conscious of the way they looked to everyone.
And that's why he says, so he says when you get too focused on becoming the artist, then you lose sight of what your art is really about.
Totally. But what's interesting is that Yoko was more of a conceptual artist than him. Like, he was making more pop music. Yes, he had the time with Maharishi and everything where I think he was trying to ascend to a more spiritual plane through his art. But like when Yoko was the one who had all this crazy performance art.
Well, they talk about how when they met, he wasn't that impressed at her gallery
she had this thing where it's like this nail,
the balloons, and and then he climbed the ladder, and she had I guess painted on the ceiling or something like that, and that struck him because he said, you know, all this art that he had been seeing was so negative and anti, and it was all anti, and she had something that was like and it was
absolutely,
you know, very refreshing, he said, as a, you know, as a positive force, as an art force,
which I thought was, you know, beautiful. However I feel about her as an artist, because honestly I find her work a little bit, I mean, especially all the primal scream and the, you know, her imagery, I find it a little disturbing, and it doesn't speak to me personally as much as something else necessarily. And I've seen her, you know, live at performances and this and that. But it's a really compelling story that the two of them have, and I think that they really did try to create something new and interesting. You were saying something about her childhood, though, and how she grew up, and how that maybe...
so she, I guess, I mean, her family was, they actually... a long line of, I guess, samurai warriors.
Wow.
And her dad was a banker. So they were very upper class.
Yeah, they were very comfortable.
In the Japanese society. And so I guess it was World War II.
She grew up in the States, though. She grew up, didn't she?
Well, after World War II... the family, I mean, the economy fell, and they ended up, their family moved to the mountains. And to a little mountain village, and they had no money. And then she ended up marrying a guy that was, I get them confused because she was married twice before John.
And
they were both musicians, but at one point she was put into a mental institution because she had a mental breakdown.
Wow.
And I'm trying to remember. It was a lot of information, but she had, with her second husband, he was a jazz musician. They had a child. And he ended up taking the child. She didn't see her daughter.
Now that's something really interesting. That's what we're gonna, the next couple we talk about.
And they deemed her an unfit mother, and you know
that's so often the case though with these artistic women. And we're gonna touch on our next people are gonna be Salvador Dali and Gala, because this sort of thing happened. But go on.
No, but it was heartbreaking, and then you see it's like. When you look at it psychologically, because I'm always interested in the psychology of a person, and you know where they come from and how do they go, you know, connecting the dots, right, in the past to see where you are now. And that's something that Steve Jobs talks about is you can't connect the dots in the future, but you can in the past, and you can kind of see like
such a smart
But you know, she psychologically you can see like, oh, if someone took my child. I could see why maybe later the scream that I held in, I would have a primal scream. To take your child from someone.
And actually the performance that I saw.
I mean, even when I think about it, it makes me like, it pulls on me emotionally.
And that when she actually did that performance with Sean Lennon, her son that she had with John. And I think that with him, she was able to have that brand of motherhood that she hadn't been able to have before. So you really see how it feeds into that.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. But I think that for her, having somebody who believes so thoroughly in her, you know, as John Lennon did, you know, and she has really carried on the legacy of his work. You know, it's like, you can tell she wasn't just in it for, I don't know, for any, it seems like this was such a crucial part of herself. And he describes the love that they had like something that he'd never experienced in his life. And so it really was, you do think, oh wow, they really did find like their creative half to them. And whether the people, the public, believes in it or likes it or
understands it or
doesn't
you know,
even matter at the end of the day, because that is feeding those artists. And so that's what happened with Salvador Dali and Gala, who was his wife. He was actually a virgin before they got married. He had some little sexual issues going on. She, however, was hot to trot. She'd been married a couple times. She met her first husband, who was a poet. I think her first husband was Paul Éluard, who's French. They met at a sanatorium in Switzerland. They both they weren't cray-cray, but they
if
had.
You're thinking of a place to meet someone.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of a red flag.
Yeah,
it was more of a health thing, but I think there was probably a mental component.
A health thing. I mean, didn't like, was it syphilis?
It was not syphilis. I think it was like not the flu. It was, you know, one of these, you know, fashionable maladies of the moment of like, oh, I think I have this thing. I must go to Switzerland.
Syncope.
I must go to Switzerland.
I must go to Switzerland to get the fresh air of the mountains.
Exactly. So that's what they did. She meets this poet. She falls into this very artistic group. Same thing. She has, I don't remember if she had no, she didn't have a child with him. I think she married another poet or artist after that who was in the same circle, because, you know, she liked to play her cards like pretty close to the chest there. She's like, let me just, you'll do. She has a child, same thing, like kind of the unfit mother stereotype. To what point she was, I'm guessing she may have been a little bit more of an unfit mother just because she was really focused on getting around a lot. But she was such a character. When she met Dali, he just completely fell for her head over heels, even though he was not into physical or romantic love so much. And in fact, he liked to kind of show her off and like pass her around to his friends. Like that was, that was their deal.
She was one of his accessories.
Yeah, but he was kind of one of hers too. You know, like she was a willing participant. And not only this, like I feel like he always looked up to her so much. He produced a bunch of paintings of her, which we'll put some up on the screen. And she was just the apotheosis of absolutely everything that he could have looked for in a muse and in a woman and everything else, like effed up as their relationship was. And she, you know, cheated on him constantly. But I mean, he knew about it, and he bought her this beautiful house. I don't know if you've seen it. It's in Cadaqués, Spain. It's in this little fisherman's village.
I don't think I've seen it.
There's like a penis-shaped swimming pool with like Coca-Cola bottles sunk into the cement and like all this crazy art everywhere. But it was her castle, essentially. It gave them a aristocratic title to buy this property, so she became the Marquess of something or whatever. But she told him that he had to ask her in writing anytime he wanted to come and see her there. Like she needed a heads up.
Because she had other
busy.
People. She was busy.
She had other stuff going on
in the castle.
Exactly. But you think so many of the things that he kind of riffed off in the insanity, but she gave him permission in a way to kind of go on and be absolutely nuts. Like it's obvious that that's something.
Well, I do think that is, for me, it is kind of a criteria that I don't think I could be in a relationship with someone who didn't accept me completely.
I think that's
for
really,
who I am.
I think that's very important, especially creatives in a relationship.
Yeah, because if they reject that part of you, that fundamental part of you, then you're just going to resent the person. You're not going to be able to, I don't know. I mean, I just think that there has to be a freedom. And, you know, I mean, I don't think you necessarily have to agree to
sleep with everybody's friends.
Yeah. I mean, if that's your thing and you're into that and you need that to be creative, you know, I have no, say on how people do that. But I do feel like, you know, in my relationship, there's a lot of freedom to just be who I am.
Yeah,
and there's no rules about.
Right, and see, that's the thing that I think is interesting in artist relationships that work. I think, first of all, a shared value system is really important because you can have completely different realms, artistic realms that you participate in, but I think that, and different ways of producing your art and different ways of being creative, but I think that having that crucial value of this is important to me, this is who I am this artist or this creative, and it's important to be supported in that. Like, I think that that's super important. I think that like putting down the ground rules of like, listen, this is your place, this is my place, and that might change a little bit over time, and we're going to negotiate it. But I think that there has to be a certain level of communication, and I think a lot of these artists, the story of their meeting is usually something where they met and they had these crazy conversations.
And they had an understanding. Yeah. It was like, okay, you get this part of me, part of me that I don't even totally get.
Yes, and so that's the other thing where being an artist is not like exactly a symbol of stability or sanity. No, I mean so there is a little bit of that, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of like you're chasing the, it's not a static thing. It's like, oh, there it is, and you put your hand on it and it moves, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that's completely static, which is good. You don't want it to be static.
No, you don't. But that does mean that you run the risk of the relationship running its course, or you run the risk of having some very destructive,
or becoming stagnant,
or becoming I mean, and the relationship that I find so interesting, kind of on that subject, is Marina Abramovic and what's that guy's name? What's
Ulay?
Ulay. Yeah, I was like Ulay.
And they like tie their ponytails together.
Yes, I'm like, he doesn't even get. I mean, what's very funny is that Ulay has never. She's stepped out on her own.
Yeah.
Did he die or something? I don't even know. Like, he's not.
I don't know.
After they broke up, like, what happened to Ulay? I mean, the one.
Yeah. If anybody has any information on Ulay,
maybe he's living with
we
Cher,
could Google it. But yeah. Maybe he collaborated with
one name wonders everywhere. Olay.
Olay, come Sade. Yeah, maybe the limerick will happen after all.
Maybe it's not too late for that yet.
Not.
So it's early yet.
I mean, it's still early.
It's still freaking early. But so Marina Abramovic and Ulay, they met. Did they meet in art school? I think they did. I think they met in art school. And if they didn't, it's a great story, and that's what we're going to say they did. But they had all this collaborative work.
Yeah, and they spent a decade doing, pretty much exploring ego and artistic identity.
Very much so. And kind of playing off of each other with like the idea of force and tension and reflection.
Yes.
And all that.
Which is very cool.
It is. It's a really cool idea. And you saw the one, I believe, where he's pulling back an arrow. She's got a bow. Yeah. And the arrow's pointed at her and he's pulling it back. And it's this whole thing of, she's putting herself out there. She's vulnerable. And he's controlling the destiny, though she's really definitely the more famous and successful artist. But he's holding her fate literally in his hands. And I'm like, that's super interesting.
It is super interesting.
Yeah, and then when they broke up, and this was the interesting
thing. Oh my God, I love the breakup.
Right? I mean, this is before the Gwyneth Paltrow era of conscious uncoupling. This was beyond. So they're breaking up, and, clearly they can't just break up normally.
No, they have to. No. It has to be like this collaborative, artistic explosion.
Right? Like Great Wall of China.
Yeah, Great Wall of China.
Opposite ends.
Yeah, they walk
towards
and they
each
meet,
other.
And they have their final goodbye.
Yeah, which I was like,
oh my God, I mean, like, throw up in my mouth. Yeah.
It only would have been better if he'd given her like some plant or something from their apartment that
she continued to like nurture as a
I mean, that would have been amazing. I think they failed in their whole thing because we made
I think they should have broke bread.
I think they should have done something like that. They should have
shared a bowl of ramen or something.
They were in China. I mean,
and then did the Lady in the Tramp thing with the noodle,
and then slap each other.
I mean, they should have talked or pushed one off.
Like seriously, the missed artistic opportunities.
Yeah, there was so many ways. This could have gone down so many ways.
It could have gone down so many ways, and they you know what? We thought that whole Great Wall of China thing was a big gesture, but actually we were wrong. Like now that we look at it, we're like,
it could have
failed.
Yeah, it was a failure.
Well, and that's like Jackson Pollock and Lee. And poor thing, I always forget her name.
But it's unfinished business. I mean, they really should. They might have to get back together.
I think they might have to. That'd be amazing. But we think Ulay might be away. I don't know.
I mean,
Ulay is. Where is he? Ulay is disappearing.
Ulay.
Poor Ulay. He probably, if he's listening to us, which he's not.
Hashtag find Ulay.
Hashtag find Ulay. We're going to hashtag that. That's going to be so good. So if somebody has Ulay somewhere, let us know.
Ulay all day.
Ulay all day. We're so bad now. We're going down a bad rabbit hole. So that's going to be a no-no. Which other artists did we have? Oh, we had Stieglitz and O'Keeffe.
Yes,
so I love O'Keeffe both. With the two F's.
That bothers her.
It bothered. Why?
I don't know. It doesn't bother me.
It bothered me.
I like
Maybe
it.
I misspelled it.
Yeah, look, and look what I did.
Her notes. O'Keeffe with one F. See?
That's a little bit interesting.
See? I'm telling you, it's disturbing. It's like a completely disturbing element.
I didn't even know that bothered me too.
See?
I guess it bothered me too.
It bothered you too. See, that's why we have this creative partnership.
Yes.
We have the same values about spelling. But yeah, so Stieglitz and O'Keeffe. Interesting case because he was super established and older than she was, photographer, very well known, obviously. And kind of the deal was that he was supporting her financially.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something really interesting. But what's interesting with that is that often you'll have somebody who's like a banker or, you know, a lawyer supporting an artist. But this is another artist who's made it, like, you know, successfully enough financially to be able to support his artist partner, and they remained very much in love for a long time, like love letters, right, left and center.
Like 20,000 love letters, I think I read. They made a book out of it.
Don't they make you feel that? I'm like, wow, I don't think I've written a letter to my husband in years.
I was like, what?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, and they talked about, I don't know, I read something. They talked about how like the long distance relationship can kind of stimulate that.
That can, yeah, that can. I mean, that gives them, I mean, first of all, it gives them the freedom to be artists, because I think the other thing that's difficult with artists in a relationship is that you need space and you need time to create. So that long distance thing does work out pretty well, and it creates that tension.
And the tension
that's going to inspire. Yeah,
really like to create.
But yeah, I think that that's kind of major. But then the interesting thing about George O'Keeffe to me is that, you know, it's like the student, you know, surpasses the teacher. He wasn't such a teacher, but
but I think that is how their relationship started, wasn't it? There was like a teacher-student thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
wait.
In popular culture...
Oh, I don't even have it.
Oh. In popular culture, she basically surpassed him, I think, in fame, because her stuff was so romantic. I think the womanliness of what she was, you know, doing. He was mostly black and white photography.
Yeah, it provoked. You know. But he did do all those nude photos of her. So
which were really striking.
Yeah.
And so she she wasn't just a subject. She was definitely a collaborator in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was exactly. And I think her art provoked this kind of deep subconscious reflection about the feminine essence and the female and the flowers and
it had pretty colors
and it was pretty colors
in a dorm room.
I
had one.
I mean, you know, recently they had a retrospective at the De Young.
Yes.
And I mean, this was a few years ago. And my daughter was in 3rd grade, I think. And so we went on a field trip to see the O'Keeffe art.
And a 3rd grader can appreciate it.
And they are asked to do a piece of art. And maybe I'll send it to you because it's pretty brilliant. My daughter did this giant, and you know, basically their interpretation of George O'Keeffe. I mean, they don't copy a painting, but what they feel about it.
So cool.
And the painting that my daughter did was so brilliant.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's giant. I really want to make it into a canvas. Like I want to blow it up on a canvas.
Amazing. Yeah.
But it's incredible and inspiring, and you can see that, you know, how easy it is to kind of download the feeling of her paintings.
Absolutely. And you couldn't do that with a Stieglitz, you know, photo series because it doesn't lend itself to the same type of...
There's a dimension
there's a different... And it's just, who you're sharing it with and who can enjoy it and who can be touched kind of in this immediate sense. So I think that that's interesting, but I do think their relationship really played into their success because because I think that there was the tension, but there was also the security, you know, and that's a major thing of knowing that somebody's got your back.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Like you know, once you know, to be in a secure relationship allows me to kind of relax about that, and I'm not distracted about seeking that out.
Piece that's not exactly.
So I'm like, okay, I can focus on other things.
Yeah,
you know, because I do think people, you know, they may say that they don't, but I think we're naturally social animals, and we do want to be in relationships.
Yes, and it gives you somebody that can be a sounding board, first of all, but it also, and this was the other interesting thing that I was reading about all these artist couples and that are successful versus not successful, because the forces tearing apart creatives are pretty strong. I mean, you have the need for change, you have some instability, you know, mental or otherwise, you have a need for reassurance, you have that whole misunderstood stereotype, you have all of that could rip you apart. And so they're like, how can you be creatives living together and stay successful? And so I was talking about that unity of values and vision, and trying to be on the same general schedule where and if possible can help. And then having, just knowing that you are individuals, but that you can, you know, a lot of you can collaborate together. So some of the couples I looked at created work together, like Gilbert and George.
Yes.
The English artist who they're like, we're two people, but we're one artist.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that Christo, you know, who raps all the, you know, the Reichstag and all that stuff, his wife, Jeanne-Claude, who I don't think she's a very, she passed away recently. I guess they both did. She had a very interesting artistic look. She was very obviously kind of his muse, and he said that the name of the artist for him was not just Christo. The name of the artist was Christo and Jeanne-Claude. And when you would meet them as a couple, she would repeat that, he would repeat that, but I've always seen mostly just him working on the art. And I'm like, that's so interesting how he brought her in to be, you know, kind of part of this. And then with Gilbert and George, I believe they broke up romantically a while back, as did like Dolce and Gabbana, for example, who we can talk about, two creatives who were romantic and then kept working together. And with Dolce and Gabbana, what's happening is that I think that they broke up, and now there's this divergence of like political opinion and, you know, the image that they're having, each of them in the media, and it's very difficult now because they've got this creative brand that they've done, and you've got one who's kind of running his mouth about, you know, adoption and families and, you know, gays and this and that, and then the other one who's like, hold up, you know. But that's really hard once you have that brand. How do you do that?
Well, because once you create something, it kind of, again, you've created an offspring.
It's like having it's like, you know, having a kid.
And it could be, you know, a project, it could be a company, it could be, you know, a lot of things. And it, you know, it creates a life of its own. You know, it's kind of, once you create something, it's out there.
And you
know?
kind of, you need to make the decision of whether you nurture it or you let it die. And also, and that's why sometimes with artists who are in romantic relationships, it's easier to be like, okay, let's do one project together, but not, you know, continue. But you have like those, the photographers, Inez and Vinoodh, what's his name? Vinoodh and Inez. Anyway, they're fashion photographers, really, really artistic couple. They've been working together forever, married and total collaborators. And I wonder, you know, and I don't wish for that to end for them at any point, but I wonder what's going to happen if they do have a breakup. And it seems like they're super simpatico, all in the same, you know, Ruben Toledo and his wife, also he's fashion illustrator, she's a designer, and they very much collaborate. You know, they manage to keep that balance somehow.
And I think once you find, I think there is something about having that one person that really just fully accepts you. And knows the other, like they accept and fully know this creative aspect of you.
That gives them confidence, and it gives them, no doubt, some base on which they can kind of keep producing.
And you come back and you restore yourself, and you have a safe place to be creative. And I think that that's, you know, if that is truly there. I mean, I think there's a lot of ego sometimes in this creative process, and you know, you could be with somebody who is, you know, like I said, Diego would say that Frida was more talented than him. If his ego couldn't tolerate it, then it could be, you know, a problem.
But I think that that's why he cheated on her so much, because he needed to feed his ego in some other way. You
probably.
Know? And I think that that's the other interesting thing, where you have, you know, that security of being in a relationship, but you have that pain that comes from and you have the coming apart and breaking apart all the time. But it kind of gives it a flow, I think. I think once it becomes this pattern, it's something that can be inspiring.
It's stimulating to the process.
I believe so.
You know, because I mean, even, you know, Joseph Campbell, you know, talked about, you have to have, you know, in creativity, you have to have the destructive, you know, you have to break the egg to make the omelet. You have to have the destructive forces in order to bring something else to the table.
Well, we were talking about Brexit and creatives as well in a past episode. I think it was our Gimlet episode, was it? Maybe.
Gimlet.
Maybe. I think it was.
Because
it was
very
English,
British.
so British. And that's what they were saying, that the breaking apart of these creative couples was maybe going to create a new tension and a new reason to
it does. I mean,
making some more painful art. Oh, I just figured out Jackson Pollock's wife, Lee Krasner was her name. Yeah, and poor woman. I mean, really, I think she was the more talented of the two.
Probably.
She was the one who really came up with that concept of splashing the paint on the canvas and everything. And he took it and ran with it. He was a very macho dude, very much about, fast cars and living, fast living. Yeah, all of that. And I feel like she just kind of sank to the bottom there.
Well, then there was Picasso and Francois Gilot.
Yes,
and she was a painter in her own right when she met Picasso. She was a lot younger than him.
A lot younger. He turned her into his muse, which I think is a difficult position to be in, especially if you're an artist in your own right.
Yeah.
Being that muse, it's like you've been kind of fixed into this
archetype. There's a projection on you that maybe you didn't even agree to.
So much.
You don't even know what the terms of it are, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're an artist yourself and you're like, I didn't agree to be portrayed this way, or maybe you did, but now this is how people are seeing you.
Right.
And that's kind of come back to what John Lennon was saying, that people saw him as a certain type of musician, certain type of artist, and now being portrayed in a different way. With his full cooperation, people are not liking it and they're not getting it. So for her, for François Gilot, like that was hard. Did she continued painting, or
I mean, he really influenced her, creatively, and then she broke into Cubism. So she became really into Cubist. Yes. Cubist artist. I can't even say it.
Serious Cubist artist.
Serious Cubist.
Yes.
Yes, I am a Cubist. I do a lot of Rubik's Cube.
I do a lot of cubing.
Rubik's Cube. We should do a whole episode on Rubik's Cube.
No, I could never do one.
I'm joking.
I've got too much of an ego for that. I'm not capable.
I'm joking. But so she got really into Cubism, and but you don't really. I mean, maybe if you're super into Cubism.
Yeah, you're like,
wow.
But
then you're Francois, but you don't.
But you know what you're going to say. You're going to be like, oh, she was influenced by,
Picasso.
And, you're not going to give her full credit because, there's this assumption, and we were speaking when we had our ill-fated bad recording when we tried to bring in our first guest, who had all these incredible relationships with these very talented artists, men, writers, playwrights. And she's a painter in her own right, and she kind of told us, no, I was fine being the girl.
Yeah, and we weren't fine with that.
We were not fine with that. And we were like the Playboy interviewer who's like, no, but this. And she was like, no, I was fine being the girl. And we're like, that's not okay. Well, clearly for her it was. Like, who the hell were we to go so crazy?
Well, we were projecting some kind of idea on what it was.
Yes.
What you were getting something from this.
Right.
And maybe she was getting something from it, but maybe she was just having fun.
That's exactly what I think she was trying to tell us. But we're like, no!
We're like, no, this is deeper meaning. And so you do have to be careful, I think, when you get into relationships about projecting this idea onto other people and trying to get them, and even I have friendships and I feel like, I have friendships that are somewhat superficial because they don't really see the point of me doing creative activities. Like I said, the hairdresser was like, well, are you making money? And
that's
it's like
their thing. And then
it's like, okay, well, you may be somebody that does something only for money. I feel like there's other value in doing something for the sake of creative process.
Right. But then you've got the other thing as well, is that sometimes you'll make a friend because you're impressed by like their creative passion, or you'll get into a relationship and you're in a relationship with an artist or a creative, and that's the thing you love about them. And then what happens when they decide that, you know what, it's not working out, I'm going to become, something more run-of-the-mill every day, and that they lose that creative drive. I think that so much of what makes them attractive to you falls away.
Well, I dated a guy that, a very creative, interesting man. I'm not going to go into any more details either, because that would just be, I'm not there yet. But yeah, I mean, that was truly the thing that I was attracted to originally. And I could appreciate that. And even now, if I spend time with him at all, I consider it like a visit to the museum.
Interesting.
I appreciate him for what he brings to the table, but I can only be with him in small doses.
And that's the other issue with creatives, for sure. Like sometimes it's so
too
hard
much.
To take. Yeah, it's too
these
much.
These aspects that don't work. You get into these conversations that don't make any sense to me. And it's like they make sense maybe to someone else, but they don't to me. And I can't, I can go, I can spend time. It's like a museum visit.
Right. And then you're like, I've seen too much art. Because when you go to the museum and you're done, you're like,
fried.
My brain's fried. I've seen too much. I'm not really looking at this, and I'm not really enjoying it. It's like saturation.
You reach a saturation point.
And if that's your relationship, then you're like, okay, this is not going to work out. So it's kind of
there is a balance.
Yeah, there is a balance.
There is a balance.
So I think that in conclusion, like having a romantic relationship that's also a creative one or an artistic one, it can be a really great thing because you learn kind of the fact that you can't 100% know somebody else, and that you learn those healthy boundaries sometimes. If you learned about how not to make them be your end all be all and your muse and your only inspiration, and how to have those healthy separations. And I think that that's kind of cool. But I do think it's important when you're a creative to maintain your own identity and place. Like you don't want to end up subjugated to somebody unless that's okay with you.
Yeah, unless it's okay with you. I mean, I do think that there is something, ultimately when you are in relationships or when you're doing anything, you kind of have to, make a commitment to yourself that you're going to use it as an opportunity to learn more about yourself. Yeah. And what you bring to the table and who you are. Totally. And how that collaborates or it, works with other people or another relationship.
Exactly. And I think that we have this idea, we have this very Disneyfied romantic love idea where it's like it needs to last forever.
Right.
And people's business partnerships don't work that way, and that's something we'll be exploring on our next episode. But people's romantic relationships, maybe they don't always work that way. Maybe that whole lifelong romantic love thing is not the reality. Maybe you can have something super passionate and powerful for a moment, and then when it's not working anymore, that can be okay if it ends.
So I think I remember the couple. There was a couple that it was like they had a 2-year relationship, but it really propelled them. I can't remember who it is.
Maybe we'll remember it. Maybe we'll put it up there.
Oh, it was Man Ray and Lee Miller.
Oh yeah.
And it was and it was a 2-year relationship,
and it was beneficial in a way. Yeah, it did.
She was his photo assistant.
Yes,
and
They're very talented though.
Yeah. And then it, she became his muse, and then his lover, and then it, but very short-lived, ultimately.
Exactly, and that's okay too. So there you go. Feel free to give up, as we're doing on our Irish coffees. Which
we're giving up because it's
all okay.
I am strung out on coffee. And
very much so. But I loved this one. This was a fun conversation.
This was a really good one,
right?
Thank you.
Cheers, you guys. We had so much fun, and we look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, send this to your friends, subscribe, check it out.
Yeah, and get drunk on the creative possibilities with us.
Drunk on the creative possibilities.
We have way more stuff coming your way.
Absolutely. See you guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.